All right. So, Amber, thank you so much for joining me today for our LinkedIn Live conversation about diversity, inclusion, and leading in the age of a new normal.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, everyone, I want you to meet Amber Aziza, who is just fabulous. We talked on my podcast, Support is Sexy, 2 years ago, I feel like now,
Yes,
two or three, a
yeah.
while ago. And I've just been so fascinated to see your journey just as an entrepreneur, as you're continuing to grow your business, but especially in this new age, whatever. First of all, my first question is, what is the new normal? But in this new age that we're all in, what does it look like for companies to be focusing on diversity and inclusion? How should it be different? How should it look the same? But first, I want to talk about you and tell everyone a little bit about you and what you do.
Absolutely. So I am the founder and CEO of AAE Corporation, which is a conglomerate of family owned businesses that focus largely on the employee side of organizations. So we support companies in their HR, in their training and development, in their organizational development side of things, and just helping them have a happier, safer, more engaged workforce. And so I have been a DEI expert and certified DEI trainer for over, we'll say 17 years. We
Right.
don't need to, we'll say the number will age myself, right? So it's been a while. Back when I was first certified, we only called it diversity and we only focused on skin color. So that'll tell you
Mm.
how far back it was. And it's really evolved into so much more now than just that conversation. It's become so much more detailed and so much more nuanced. Sorry, my puppy's in the background.
That's okay. This is what we do, right? This is what happens
Right.
now.
This
Everybody's
is a
come
part
home.
of
Hey,
it.
puppy.
Right. So it's become so much more nuanced in the conversation now. It's no longer just the skin color, it's now so many more characteristic traits that we have to take into account. And so we specialize in that. We go into organizations, we help organizations create their DEI strategy, we help them with their employee engagement. Excuse me, sorry. Got a very noisy toy that I thought I put up. There we go. I don't know how parents do it. Kudos to
I
those
know.
parents out
I
there.
know, right?
So we help them with all aspects of employee engagement, and DEI is a huge piece of that.
So my first question then, how would you define our new, now actually, before we even talk about that, how would you define diversity as you see it today?
Right. So to me, diversity is understanding, appreciating, and including the aspects of everyone's worldview, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their background, regardless of their experiences, but actively taking the time to include and make everyone feel like they belong.
And how would you say that companies need to look at diversity differently today in light of just what is the new consciousness that now exists among a lot of corporations? And do you feel now that we're a little bit beyond, well, at least the killing of George Floyd, but of course there's been
Mhm.
others since then, and this is just something that Black people live with all along. But as far as the quote unquote hype that there was, or not hype, intensity that there was around the movement just a
Mhm.
few months ago, do you find also that corporations are still committed to diversity as maybe they were in May and June?
So I would say 30% of the companies that made all the noise and posted the black squares and sent out the emails, 30% of them were really dedicated and really followed through. The other
30,
70,
Amber?
30% at that, if we had to sit down and have our data miners run the numbers, I would guarantee you that number would probably be very close to 30%.
Wow.
A lot of it was performative allyship.
Mm.
So, oh, look, hey, we care. Black Lives Matter to us too. We're going to bring in a speaker. We're not going to pay them as much as we would anybody else, but we're going to bring in a speaker and we're going to have them just present about why it's important to be diverse, right? Lots of low hanging fruit. I think we were bombarded right after the George Floyd killing with requests from corporations. But a lot of those requests were low hanging fruit. We just want one training. We just want, can
Mhm.
you help us create a memo to send out? Can you help us craft an email? And it's like, no, we don't do band aid solutions. We only
Mhm.
do the deep dive. You're really trying to make a change and make a difference. And so I think there was that 70% who were kind of like, we're just doing this so that, people don't hate us as an organization.
Right.
But what's happened now that the Jacob Blake incident has happened, now it's the second wave. And I told my team, I said, there's going to be a second wave. We've been super busy with the first wave. I knew the second wave was coming. I said, there's going to be a second wave. Unfortunately, there was a second wave, a third wave, a fourth wave, all within the same week of one another. And so, now these companies are starting to feel the heat, because the people who remember that they put up the black squares, the people who remember that they said, oh yeah, we're going to do our part, are now like, wait, so what'd you do? Where's the
Right.
proof?
That's
What'd you do?
right. That's so funny. I was looking at a company the other day. It's a furniture company, so something that has nothing to do with well, certain furniture companies certainly can have something to do with activism, but it's not necessarily a company you think of. And I remember seeing a post from them back when things happened, or when I was shopping recently for a sofa, and I said, "Oh, that's great that they put out their statement about Black Lives Matter and what they're going to do as an organization." But then I said, "But how will I know as a consumer?" Because that's really
Mhm.
what I believe. You know more than me, but what I believe the oh my gosh, we got to do something other than so they don't burn down our buildings. But the other side of it,
Right.
there was that. But the other side of
Absolutely.
it was, we don't want people to realize they can take their money elsewhere. But how do
Mhm.
we as consumers, even, or people from the outside, or even if I'm thinking about working for a certain company, how do
Mhm.
I not even hold them accountable, but know that they've at least held themselves accountable?
So I would ask them, beyond the public statement you made, what else did you do? What
Mhm.
monies did you donate? Can you show us the proof of that payment? Show us the receipts, essentially.
Right.
We want to know what you did. And I like to even take it a step further, which is, okay, great. So you made a big donation. What did you do outside of that? Because
Mhm.
that $1 million donation was a drop in the bucket to your revenue. So what else did you do? What trainings did you put your leadership through? How are you making sure that your leaders can remove their bias from situations, or at least check their bias and understand that it's there? How are you being anti-racist versus just not racist? Are you creating
Mhm.
an environment of tolerance versus an environment of belonging and inclusion? Because people often think that tolerance and inclusion are the same thing. I'm tolerating you being in the same space as me, so
Who
everything's
wants to
great.
be
You're
tolerated,
included.
right?
Exactly. I
I
tell
say,
people,
who
if you
wants
think
to be
about
tolerated?
right, if you think about a marriage, would you want to marry someone who
Who
just tolerates your
tolerates
presence?
exactly.
Like,
Exactly. That
who
sounds
does
awful.
that?
Exactly. That
And
sounds
even
awful.
inclusion and belonging are two very different things. Inclusion is saying, I'm including your thoughts and your worldview in our decision making. But belonging says, I make you feel just as comfortable as our white male executives feel in the organization. I make you feel just as comfortable to voice your opinion. I make you just as comfortable to apply for that job and know that you're going to get the same consideration. I make you just as comfortable to understand that when it's time for raises to come out, that yours is going to be considered by the value of your skill set and not by the color of your skin or my own bias of what I think your people do or don't do. That's the
Mhm.
difference between inclusion and belonging. And so I really champion for people to not stop at that I. We think of the DEI. Don't stop at the I, jump into the B, because the belonging is where you really know that you've done it.
So let's talk then to all the leaders. And if anybody has questions, please post them in the comments, which I believe you can do. But I have plenty of questions if you don't have any. So I'm interested in, for the people who are leading companies, whether this is corporations or even small businesses, entrepreneurs too. I know have been thinking
Mhm.
about how can you either be more inclusive or make people feel like I will say belonging hasn't been something that I've heard as much mentioned, other than a few folks I know personally who talk about that. But I don't know if companies are thinking that way. But are there some steps or some checkpoints or something that people should be thinking about in order to do better?
Absolutely. I think the first step in any, because every business is different, every business size and business phase is different. I think that in those phases, you have to consider a few things. The first is your introspective view. Are you looking inward? Are you exposing yourself to what the basis of diversity, equity, and inclusion actually is. Are you doing that deep dive work that's needed to create a diverse, aware business? So if it's just you, or it's you and one or two employees, you need to start doing that work, facilitate the understanding that diversity encompasses so much more than the color of your skin. It encompasses so much more than just the people you know. Saying I have a Black friend does not make you diverse,
Right.
and it does not make your worldview diverse. Even saying I'm married to a Black person does not make you diverse, nor does it make your worldview diverse. So challenge yourself to grow into a level of self-awareness that you may not be familiar with, in order to understand the importance of DEI in your business, and really digging into the history of business and diversity. There's so many instances where Black and brown businesses were burned to the ground. There are so many instances of LGBTQ community businesses being completely shut down for frivolous reasons. So understand that, so that you can understand why it's so important to support other businesses that are more diverse. I think on a higher end, when you get kind of into the large enterprise level, you have to look at your company culture. So are you facilitating a company culture that's conducive to people feeling like they truly, truly belong? Do you have a diversity committee or a diversity ERG? Do you have a DEI mission statement? Does your leadership go through anything more than just a basic cultural competency training that's an hour and a half when they first start, and they'll forget it all because it was some dude in a monotone voice going through slides, right? So consider those things. Are you following the platinum rule versus the golden rule? So the golden rule says treat everyone else as you'd want to be treated. That's not the real world, right? The platinum rule instead says treat everyone else how they want to be treated.
That's right.
Which is the most important thing to do. And so when you look at the company culture, are you bringing in diverse leadership? What percent of your workforce is, minorities or women, compared to what percent is your leadership? If you're noticing that there's a huge disparity between those numbers, you've got more work to do.
Those are great tips. And then how do you as an organization go in and help a company decipher those things? Is it because it sounds like what you're saying is the importance of, like, what do they say? What isn't measured can't be adjusted, or you can't figure out the success if it's not measured, right? So it sounds like percentages, measuring, really getting down to some of the very detailed and measurable things, as opposed to, like you said, just a statement and those kind of things, or the training that's part of the where the bathrooms are training, kind of when you first join a company.
We're diverse, the bathrooms are over there.
Exactly, right. Don't say these words and then the bathroom. Exactly. So tell us, what is it important does your company go in and help companies measure these things so that there's accountability?
We certainly do. So my clients will tell you, our organizational clients will all tell you, AE is all about the data and the numbers. And if it can't be backed by data, we don't want to hear that you did it, because it doesn't matter, right? So we go in and we start with an assessment, and it is a full, detailed, one of the executives called it an assault on their culture. He's like, you just came in with this detailed assessment that's an assault on our culture, because it truly does break down and say, like, it asks questions and behavioral questions and manners that makes people answer honestly, and they don't even realize that they're showing their bias. And so from that assessment, we're able to determine your leadership believes this to be true. Your employees believe this to be true. Your employees don't believe that there's any upward mobility for anyone that's not a white male, or your employees don't believe that anyone can advance unless there's a level of nepotism involved. And so from that, we then create a full strategy of how are we going to tackle that. It often involves building out a DEI advisory panel within the organization, or some sort of employee resource group that's dedicated to diversifying the culture. We will even go in and build out full diversity departments for organizations, or revamp their HR altogether. We assess everything from their employee handbook to their onboarding process, their offboarding process. So how are you letting people go? How are you even finding people? Let's start there, right? A lot of people don't realize that recruiting is the number one way to show your bias as an organization. Because if
Right.
you're only looking for people on Indeed and on LinkedIn, you're already biased. You're already getting a biased group of folks, because those people are people who fit a very specific mode. And if they do not, or if they're not in that area, then you're not even going to see them. Right. So we
Mm.
teach our clients how to expand their view. There are over 50 plus job boards dedicated specifically to diverse candidates. And so if you're not even aware of them, if you can't even name 5 of them and you're a recruiter, you already are showing me your bias. And so going through, we assess and nitpick, so to speak, every piece of the organization, from the onboarding to the offboarding to the training to how people are promoted. Is there a clear career path for people who join the organization? Or is it where you just kind of get in and you hope that you get promoted at some point?
Mhm.
We also really check the ageism in the organization. So if you're a high tech company and everything is tech, high tech, you may be alienating some of your baby boomers who have that knowledge that you need as an organization, but can't keep up because you have nothing that's intermediate to teach them how to keep up. So we really look at it from all angles. We create a strategy, and then we usually are brought in to actually implement the strategy for them.
I love the idea of a diversity panel, which sounds like it's made
Mhm.
up of, obviously, I would imagine there's a diversity lead, but then other employees, maybe, is it at different levels? So if someone, again, a small
Mhm.
business owner, for example, wanted to create something like that in their organization, if they have a team, would it be a lead, the person who is in charge of it, or a leader, and then
Mhm.
others at different levels? As opposed, 'cause I
Absolutely.
think sometimes all the executives sit around and talk about how to be more diverse, and if all the executives all look the same, whatever that same looks like,
Exactly.
it's kind of hard to, yeah, or you're all the same age, you're all the same color, you're all the same background.
Exactly. The way I best describe it is, if you give every person on your leadership team a paintbrush and you give them all the same color paintbrush, and then you tell them to go and paint us a beautiful portrait, you're going to get a one monolithic, one color picture. That's all you're going to
Right.
get. You're not going to get
Mhm.
any spectrums, any shades, none of it, because they don't have the capacity to do so, right? So you have to have the panels that are made of more diverse backgrounds. You need to have, all the colors of the spectrum that are represented in your organization. You need to have all the backgrounds, even socioeconomic statuses that they were in when they grew up is very important, because someone who grew up with a silver spoon in their mouth, who had, all of the luxuries that they wanted in their life available to them, and someone who had to scrap and scrape for everything that they had, they're going to have two very different worldviews and two very different approaches to how things should happen. And so if you aren't including those voices too, then you really don't have a diverse panel. So this is why I say diversity is so much more than just Black or white or Latino or Asian. It's so much deeper than that. And having those diversity panels will allow you to see all of the ways that you're able to improve, and not just improve just so that you can say you did it, but improve so that you have a best place to work, to improve so that you have clients that are just like, yes, that company right there, they're doing it. I want to be a part of it. This is the reason why Ben and Jerry's does so well.
Oh my gosh, Ben& and Jerry's is about that life. They're like,
They
"We
are
are going
about it.
all in on this." I was just talking to someone about that the other day, and
It was
speaking of
like,
someone like a Ben, go ahead, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, speaking of a company like a Ben& Jerry's, I wonder, have you experienced companies that have been afraid to go all in on this because they're afraid of maybe alienating their current customers or
Mhm.
clients, or whatever it is, or just the people who work there, or maybe they have a board that they answer to? I would imagine that's probably
Mhm.
a part of it too. So how do you help clients navigate that?
Yeah. So whenever we have a client that has a board, so we have a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 100 organizations as clients. And the first thing we say is, we need board sign off before we begin. We need to know
Mhm.
that they're on board with this, because the changes that we make and recommend, they're going to have to approve.
Right.
And so we don't want to do all this work to build out the strategy and then for them to say, we don't approve of this. We're not
Mhm.
doing this. right?
This is too
And for
much.
those,
Yeah.
exactly. So it has to start at the beginning. The approval has to come from the top down for us. And for those organizations that do give us some pushback and say, but our clients don't really care about this stuff. Your clients are on the wrong side of history. Okay. Your clients are entirely on the wrong side of history. And it is important that you understand that. And it's very important also that you really understand that all money ain't good money and every client isn't your client. And so when you change your decision to say, I am going to make a stance, our organization is going to change and make a stance on what our values are, and we're going to communicate those values publicly to, our clients, you need to be prepared that there's going to be some backlash, but it's okay. You'll be fine, right? You'll get even more clients who are like, look at them. They're doing it right. You don't think that organizations like Ben and Jerry's, Under Armour, what are some other organizations? Right off the top of my head, it's like, and none now.
right.
But, you don't think these are organizations that have really put in the work, that have really done the work that was necessary to their management, to their teams, to understanding what they need to do, to being more aware, admitting the mistakes they've made, and then moving forward with them. If you don't think that they didn't lose clients when they did that, of course they did. When Nike took the stand and said, we're standing with Colin Kaepernick, there were people burning Nike merchandise, which made no sense whatsoever.
Right,
exactly.
Like, we don't understand. Exactly. That's your money. Nike still has that money in the bank.
Right,
exactly.
They still have it.
And what about I think that's such a great point in the conversation. I'm wondering for leaders to have, say, within the organization. So say you come in and you do the assessment or the assault, as this one leader called it, right? You do the assessment. These are the things that need to change. At what point does the leader need to have that conversation with their team or their board or whoever? When do they need to stand up and say, this is what we're doing and a new approach we're taking because essentially it's the right thing to do, but just, because sometimes even there's clients and customers, outside folks, but then even in your organization, there might be some, folks, especially if you've been there for a while, you don't like change. Change is disruptive usually, even if it's change for the better.
Yeah. So I think my favorite approach was a client that we had that was a manufacturing organization. Things had become really tense after the George Floyd murder. It became like an inferno there. Just lots of arguments starting up, and it just became gritty and unpleasant. And so what he did was the CEO sent out a memo to his over 1,000 employees. And he said, listen, I get it. I messed up. My bad. This is on me because I never stood a firm ground on what we believe. But let me explain to you what we believe and why. And then he hit them, and of course we crafted this, but he hit them with, stats and data that backs up every point he was making. So it's not just, oh, I'm feeling emotional and I'm feeling like, it's time to say Black Lives Matter. No, it's time to say Black Lives Matter because Black women are making, 32 cents on the dollar, when you're going in and you're breaking down the numbers and the stats and you're saying this isn't right because data says it's not right. Then he said in his letter, and he added this part himself, either you're in or you're out in terms of how we move, but this is our new company culture and this is what we expect. And if you can't run with it, then we appreciate your service to the company. And he lost employees that day. He had 15 employees, 15 leaders turn in their resignation that day. And he had no problem with it whatsoever because he was truly committed to the words he wrote. So I think that's kind of the big piece is don't start it, right? Don't start it if you don't want to finish it, because this isn't easy work. Diversity isn't easy work. It's tough work. It's work that's going to cause you to lose friends and family members and have, church members not speak to you and have employees, say, I don't want to work for you anymore. But those people were people that shouldn't have been around you to begin with. Those people were people who shouldn't have been working for you to begin with. And at the end of the day, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years from now, the best comparison I can give you is, so when I was in college, I was on a huge research team for World War II. And my section of the team, our subcommittee of the team, focused on the Holocaust, which is heavy, heavy, heavy stuff. I don't even like comparing it to anything because it's just so vile and so terrible. But there were business owners who were like, yeah, this makes sense. We keep doing that. That makes sense. Yep. I'm totally believing this doctrine. And at the end of the day, when the other governments came into Germany and said, okay, y'all didn't do it right. Time to start punishing folks. Those businesses also came under fire. And a lot of people don't realize that those businesses were shut down. Anyone who had supported that movement were completely shut down and shut out. And so it's important that you understand that, being on the wrong side of history, not just because it's just ethically what you should be doing is being on the right side of history, supporting other people who are different from you, but also that advantage that you think you have by taking that stand and saying, I'm not going to support other people who are different from me. I'm going to stand in what we've been doing, which has been racist or which has been homophobic or which has been sexist or misogynist. Those people will eventually fall. And you don't want to be in those people.
You don't want to be one of those
numbers.
people. Yeah. And I wonder if for the people who, for the folks who, in that particular example, quit the organization, those 15 people, like you said, you have to know as a leader, okay, those weren't my people. They weren't. But I can only imagine, or I would imagine that most people would probably think, did I make the right decision here? If that many people, even 5, it would be a lot, but 15 or is it confirmation? Maybe it was confirmation, like this is a shift we obviously needed to make, because if these folks don't agree with being supportive of everybody and inclusive, then obviously we were, doing the wrong thing. We were not an anti-racist company.
Right. 3 requested their jobs back within a week. 3 were like, oh, sorry, I forgot it was a recession. Our bad.
Right. They made an emotional decision.
Right. They made an emotional decision. It was like, well, that emotional decision will get you right in line with unemployment with everyone else.
Right.
But, I think what it really was, and, when we had the conversations, when my team went in and had those conversations with the other leadership, they said, oh my gosh, I'm so happy they're gone, because they were the problem. People in your team act how they see. So they follow the examples that your leaders are setting. So if your leaders are setting examples that this is a good old boy club, that, women aren't welcome or women should just be secretaries, or if they're following that example of, well, Black man shouldn't be a leader and we're not going to get them any position that's higher than this, not on my team, your employees follow that same rhetoric. They take that rhetoric and they bring it into their heart and they make it their belief. Because at the end of the day, your employees, while yes, they are all individuals, and many will say like, hey, that's wrong. I don't want to work for someone that's wrong. If the leadership is standing by it, it excuses all of the other behavior everyone else is doing. Right.
And is that something they should be aware of too? Like, even if it's not something that's actually said, like you said, what you said about they take it into their heart is sort of like, this is just how it is here. And then you don't get the best from all of the people on your team.
You really don't. And, even if you look at, and I don't like bringing politics into anything when it comes to EI, because then it muddies the water. But if you look at governments, just in general, governments that went downhill, they had too many yes men around them, too many people that were like, yep, that sounds right. I'm going to keep saying yes because I think that this is the right thing to do because you said it is. And you clearly really believe in that. And I don't want to lose my job. Right. You can see it throughout history, hundreds and hundreds of years of history. You can see that. And so when you see those things happening, what ends up happening on the opposite end of that is that no one's telling them, no, this isn't right. So the culture doesn't change. It just gets worse. It goes from bad to worse to evil. And you can look across, many, many years of history in the States, in England, and Germany, and Spain. I mean, any great country that was a superpower usually fell because they had too many prideful moments where they didn't have enough people around them saying, that doesn't make sense, right? And it became if you oppose what we view, then you're out. And it's like, no, you need all of those viewpoints. You need all those people to understand that, hey, we're trying to work towards a better good. And if we're not all in to work towards that better good, then what are we doing?
Hmm. So if there were, before we let you go, if there, and this has been great, I have so many other questions, but I want to be conscious of your time. If there were one thing that you could tell a leader of an organization today, and maybe it's separate there for a small business owner and then a large
Mhm.
corporation, but if not, just a leader overall, one step that you'd want them to take towards making sure they have an environment that is diverse, inclusive, and a space of belonging for people, something that's truly transformed in their organization, what would be that piece of advice you would say, or that first step you think they should take?
That's such a good question. I think that if you're starting out, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur, I think the first step you need to take is to understand where your bias is coming from. And it sounds super basic, right? It sounds like, well, like, usually your bias comes from your upbringing. But what about it? What about your upbringing? What is it that causes you to believe what you believe? What facts and data do you have that supports what you believe? And how is that data skewed? Because data can tell you that more Blacks are in prison because more Blacks are bad. But if you dig deeper into that data, it will tell you that Black neighborhoods are over policed. So, of course, there's going to be much higher rates of crime than other ethnicities, right? If you put as much police into the same neighborhoods that are not as much represented in the prisons, their numbers would go up too, right?
Mm-hmm,
If you look
mm-hmm.
at all of the judges and see that the majority of judges who make these criminal decisions of how long a sentence is going to be, that these people are often paid by the private prisons
Prisons,
that are the ones that
exactly.
benefit from it.
That's right.
So don't just go by some fact or data that you saw on Facebook. Go by the research that you do to dig deeper. Use the 5 why method. And I say this actually, I'm going to make this for everyone. Use the 5 why method. And this is how we determine what the real answer, the root cause of anything is. It's a 6 Sigma method. So you start off by having a situation and you say why. So if you say, okay, well, there are more Blacks in prison, so clearly they're all criminals. Well, why? Why are there more Blacks in prisons? Well, okay, I guess I have to research that. Well, okay, well, maybe their areas might be over policed. Okay, why? Well, I don't know. Okay, research it. Well, okay, my research says that that was just another form of them oppressing the Black culture because they needed a way to suppress them there and oppress them due to them not being slaves anymore. Okay, why? Well, because they believed that they were inferior and that they needed to. Ah, I see. So when you ask why 5 times, you sometimes even 4, it'll get you to the answer you need.
Right.
But if you ask why 5 times, it'll get you to the root cause of what your actual bias is and where it came from. And I also would say, give yourself grace and space. I hate when people say, I'm so ashamed to be white. I'm so ashamed to be straight. Don't do that. Don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And
you're
that
not.
helps no one.
Right.
That's
It
about you.
helps no one, and you're not ashamed. So stop.
Right.
Like, that's
Right.
performative
Right.
allyship.
Right.
It really, it's not shame that you're feeling of actions that you've done, but it's the shame of you not realizing it until now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that feeling of shame is coming from. So give yourself grace and space and understand that you were not raised to believe otherwise. You were not brought up in environments to believe otherwise, likely. Now, there are some that just flip flop. But once you understand the root cause of your bias, that will allow you to operate your business, your relationships, your life in such a deeper, meaningful, understanding way that allows you to be open to receive and understand how you can best support diverse actions and diverse people in your life.
Excellent. And someone said now what questions things are popping up. It says love. LinkedIn user says love the 5 whys. Me too. Why is such a powerful word. And Angelique said, wow, I love that. Ask why 5 times, doing research along the why. Right. So it's
Mhm.
asking the why and then challenging yourself to do the research to figure it out.
Absolutely. You have to do the research. Don't just go by what you heard. Research it. I mean, think about it like a research paper. If you couldn't give me the sources and tell me, and reputable sources, not leaning sources, even when we have interns and we give them projects and we'll say, give us the sources. Even if they're left leaning, we'll say, nope,
Right. Right.
We need unbiased, actual reporting, and they have to go back and find it because, there's no such thing as the right being right or the left being right. There's just the right being right, the facts being right, right? So it's
Mhm.
important that, you stick to the facts and you don't add in the opinions of others.
And in the age of social media, I just feel like there's so many places, even if you agree with something, I think to your point,
Mhm.
you should still do the research on it. Cause sometimes you want to repost something. I've even done this. You get ready to repost something. It's like, wait, is that even true? Let me look into now I'm
Right.
going to start asking the five whys. Like, wait a minute, why? I don't know. I'm not going to post it. I don't know if that's true or not, but even if you agree with it.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Amber. I could talk to you forever, but I just was so excited to see what you're up to, what you've been doing with your company, and just how you are stepping in and impacting these corporations, large and small, um, along the way. Oh, Angelique, large and small, and making sure that we have spaces for diversity, inclusion, belonging. And the E is equity or equality?
Equity. Yep.
Equity. That's what I thought. I had a
Mhm.
bad discussion with someone the other day. I said, I think it's equity. So okay, before I let you go for real this time,
Yeah.
the difference between equity and equality. What do people need to
Okay.
understand about that?
So the easiest way to describe this is that if you think of a group of kindergartners, you have 5 kindergartners, and little Susie needs glasses because little Susie's having trouble seeing. Equality is making everyone wear glasses because little Susie has to wear glasses. But that's not fair because little Bobby doesn't need glasses. And now little Bobby can't see because you've put these glasses on him. Equity is saying we're going to get little Susie the glasses she needs because she needs this in order to operate on par with everyone else. If she doesn't have those glasses, she can't operate on the same level as everyone else because she can't see.
Mhm.
Equity works the same way in the workforce. So it's not saying, hey, everyone gets all of these advantages, everyone gets all of these pieces so we can make it equal. It's instead saying, hey, those who have a higher level of oppression, those who have things that are holding them back, even in terms of disabled, those who have
Mhm.
handicaps that are holding them back from being able to perform at the same level as everyone else, those folks, we're going to get them the tools and resources that they need so that they can operate at the same level that everyone else is operating in.
Excellent. Amber, thank you so much. I so appreciate you. You're always so willing to share and so generous. Thank you for doing this LinkedIn Live. I'm also
Yes,
going
thank
to,
you.
yes, also going to share this on the Supported Sexy podcast so people can hear the audio as well of our conversations. It'll be all the places. So if you missed it
Yay.
here, you'll be able to hear it everywhere else. Thank you so much, Amber. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye now.